Thank you. Cool. I'm Natasha. I'll quickly just say what I'm going to chat about. I'm going to roughly tell you the beginning of how I got into photography and just run through those few years of building up to the stage where I'm at now. And after that, we'll go through a couple of sort of images basically of how I work. So I went to university in Brighton about 15 years ago, did photography. While I was there, I didn't really come from a full art background before that. So I wasn't necessarily a conceptual photographer really. I was just sort of finding my way through. So I used university as a real testing ground basically. I've tried lots of things. I'm definitely not the photographer I was at all when I was at university, except some of the portrait-based stuff. But what I did do at university is, like I said, lots of testing, but I would go and do lots of work experience. So I was on set all the time. I was really into lighting, so I would go and I sort of met people within Brighton that were a bit older than me that were maybe in film and cameramen and things like that and cinematographers. So sort of at university I went and did a lot more on top of that as well, and just went on set basically, which I think was quite useful in feeling giving me options of how I was going to shoot. A lot of people at university didn't really even go in the studio, so it was quite nice to go away and learn that. You didn't necessarily get that sort of spoon fed to you at university. You had to kind of just go and do it yourself. So I did lots of that, and then left university and started assisting or building up from the assistant I'd already been doing. And I worked at a studio in Brighton where I learned lots about lighting, even more, and used to do teaching lighting and developed on that a lot more. And then got to a stage where I'd been there for quite a lot of years. If I'm storm through, and you can stop me and go back. And that's when I really honed in on the assisting. And I keep saying assisting, but it's really important. I think getting on set and working with people and seeing people who are that many years ahead of you and just how they behave on set, the different techniques. It's always worth assisting lots of different types of people to begin with when you're not quite sure what area you're interested in. I assisted people who did fashion, to people who just did portraiture for The Guardian, to food still life people, and I did that for years, and I was basically built up. I very quickly realised I didn't really want to do fashion. That was one thing I learned quite quickly after, I say quickly, over a year. It wasn't my kind of area. I loved it for the creativity and the lighting and the kind of sets and the teams, but it just wasn't an area that was for me. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to be a photographer at some stage, it is important to start following the people that in the part of the industry that I'm going to be interested in. So sort of left fashion aside a little bit, dipped in and then if there was work in that area, but headed to advertising. So I've worked with ad photographers for a long time, and that was great because it's bigger shoots, probably quite stressful. You've got clients, art directors, big sets, a lot of money being spent on it, so the photographers are generally quite stressed. Lots of lighting, some of it was lighting and some of it was natural light, but there's a lot of things you have to do. You have to be really on it. The pressure's on, and there's usually 2 or 3 assistants at a time, and that was really great. And I did that for quite a long time, actually, probably too long, some people might say. But it was really great, and I really believe in sort of building yourself up from the ground. So now I'm at a stage where I'm in that commercial world. I've still got a fair few steps to go to the point that I want to be at, but I think I know how to move within the industry because I did so much assisting and because I saw people, how they were with their clients and, what it took to please a commercial client, basically. which in the fashion bit I didn't really see, and because a lot of it was from magazines and stuff, it wasn't quite as intense compared to like a ad agency. So that was great. So I did lots of that. And when it comes to lighting, that I also found really important, even though weirdly nowadays I actually work with natural light loads. I mix the two, but on average quite a lot of my stuff has become natural light. But that's fine in a way that I have that experience, and one day I decide I want to do something with lighting, or a client wants something that I think is very lighting based, I can switch to that. And that's where I think as a photographer, if you can try and learn both, you don't have to use both, but it's good to have it, because you need to know your trade, you need to know how to use your tools. And the way to learn lighting was practice, try out stuff, use whatever lights, and go and assist, because that's the best way you're going to learn, is on set basically. If at the end we can probably go back to, if people have questions about getting into assistant, then we can go into that. So there's like lots of different ways you can go about it. So that was sort of those good, I think from university to assisting, you're looking at 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So that's like already 8, 9 years gone doing that. So it's a long process, and photography doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's the other thing is you've sort of got to be in it for the long run if you really want to make it. It has its moments, and it has those days where you just think, oh my god, what am I doing? It's massively saturated. But the positive thing is if you really love it, you will find your place, and sticking to it and is really important. And that's what I had. I had days where, I had years where you just think, oh, I don't know which way I'm going, and you're working in pubs and restaurants and everywhere just to like keep it going. But it does pay off if you sort of work at it and really think about what it is, the direction that you want to go. But I didn't find that out straight away. That's why assistant helped, because I sort of learned as I went on what I did and didn't like while I was working with people. I also learned what behaviour in a photographer I didn't like as well, because there are, you learn. So I've learned from people like the way that they work is like, oh, that was great, the way that they were with their team, the way that they discussed their idea, the way they were with the client, and other extremes where, quite, you do come across quite like aggressive photographers, or just people who aren't so great with their team. And it was something I really picked up on quite quickly, and I actually got a few years down the line would not work with them basically, because I just thought, don't need to be in that environment. But so it really has taught me as a photographer, if I work with a team of people, and if I've got a client, just a way of being and a way to speak when you're on set. So I started building, once I started focusing a bit more on the area that I wanted to go towards, I'd actually gone and talked to someone who is a friend of mine who's an agent, just on a friendship level, just to discuss my portfolio at the time. So this might have been about 6 years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago. Don't do all the maths because it's probably not going to add up. I'm sure it's about 5 years ago. About 6 years ago, I'd say. I'd had a chat with her, and that was quite good, because you have to review your work every so often. You have to, you don't just say, oh, I'm a photographer now, and then that's that. It constantly changes. I'm sure in 5 years' time, I'll probably have developed everything I've been doing this year, and I might be shooting something else, or my style might have changed, which is the beauty of what we do in a way, is that it sort of never ends, and it develops as you get older as well, and throughout your experiences. But yeah, so after speaking with her, I started to see, she sort of steered me in a bit of a direction, and then I developed on that. And so what I did is, then once I knew roughly the area I was focusing towards, I would then go and shoot some of that work. So some of it will be portfolio. I've done lots of stuff with a charity called Compassionate Eye Foundation that work with Getty, because at the moment I was trying to get into commercial. I needed a bit more work that was commercial looking. So this is when I was doing all the people stuff originally. Food is in the last couple of years actually. So all this kind of like, I was looking to try and get into this commercial, it's like, you know, like not necessarily stock, but a bit more lifestyle basically. So like this is stuff that I ended up doing for Amazon family. So this is like I started doing some campaign work like this, and that was from her direction. She was just pushing me towards exploring sort of people lifestyle basically. So I did this for a while, and I've still got this up here, but I must admit I still, at the moment, I'm probably reviewing this in itself, because this is actually quite a few years ago. And so I did that for a while, and then that's where I started building up my campaign work. See, what happens is once you get a client and then that shoot goes well and you've got something to talk about, the key is to, while it's hot, get in touch with people, get your stuff out there, blogs, LinkedIn, you know, all that stuff. And Instagram wasn't really that big a few years ago, so like now it's the whole like Instagram thing, and it does actually work. And as much as people go, oh god, I'm on Instagram, it's like if you use it properly and you connect with the right people and having the right people watching what you're doing, it does actually work. And especially now, I sort of in the last few years veered into food lifestyle. Ideally I'm people food lifestyle. If I get like a client that wants people eating food, that would be my like really like that would be a really good happy medium. But yeah, so I moved into food sort of, not necessarily by accident. I was always into still life, and weirdly it feels like a jump, but they do relate in the style that I shoot in. I tend to shoot in it's always quite fresh looking. But yes, I ended up doing food, and I've been developing on that a lot, and then I hit some big clients, or you know, like decent clients, and then I've just really stuck with them. And Instagram has obviously been out this last few years while I was working on this, and that's made such a difference, just to be able to, a lot of my biggest client recently has been the Ned, so one of Soho House's groups. It's opened in Bank recently, so I shot all their food, and I regularly shoot for them now. So with people, you know, with things like that, once you've got the client and you go all out and do really, you know, make sure you do a really good shoot, you've just got to keep on top of it then, you know, you've got to be in contact with them, you've got to make sure, you know, you get your images out in time. There's, you know, there is a high pressure, you know, like I was just saying before, I've just did a big job for Schweppes, and it's quite stressful because the client wants their pictures in a week, and you've got to slightly push against it because you want the quality to be there. And there's just that, you start learning all the way to, you know, the sort of professional way to be meeting expectations but keeping the quality. So yeah, so I just started doing lots of that basically. Is
there a food stylist usually, or you do?
So yes, good question. So the restaurant stuff actually, that I've been doing, because it's in the restaurants, the chefs are taking charge of those. And in this situation, because Soho House they have a big strong marketing team, and they are massively in charge of like what images how they come out, or how the styling. So actually the people who work, the marketing team, have been working with me on these while we're on set. But if I have the option, I would definitely work with a stylist as much as possible. So things like Jacob's Crackers and stuff was with a stylist. I'll show you, there's a stylist I work with a lot, and we often do personal shoots, but a lot of our personal shoots are done in a way to get us the work that we want. So that's half the time you've got to go and work that you want, you've got to go and shoot it. Because as much as, you know, people might look at my website an agency, they have like zero time to pick a photographer to show their clients. So weirdly, they just look for the picture that they need. It's very strange. So even though you clearly can take the photograph, because you don't happen to have the cocktail on your website, they'll go, oh, I'll just go for that photographer because they shoot cocktails. So if I want to shoot cocktails, I've got to go and shoot some cocktails and put it on my website, and then I might get the job. It's very... So yeah, so that's another thing to think about, is if you're going out there and you want to be... I want to be the portrait photographer, you've got to look at all, like in a way, look at all the places that you want to get work from, the magazines or agencies. A lot of stalking. Do a lot of stalking. That's what I do. I spend a lot of my time stalking. And it's so important. You have to do it. You have to live on Instagram a little bit. Look at what people are up to. I literally look at what agencies are up to, who got that job, who shot that campaign. I will look on all the photographers' agencies and see what everyone's up to every so often. So once, sometimes if I'm on the train, I might go, there's a bunch of photographers' agencies that I follow, and I'll be like, oh, I wonder what she shot recently or he shot recently. What stylist did that? And it's like, you have to forever be keeping up with what's going on. And that's really handy for when you get to finally have a client meeting, or just to know who you need to approach with your work. It's not easy, to be fair, and sometimes, or possibly even a lot of the times, it's someone you met talking to who said, oh, my friend works at this agency, and you get an initial in, and then, even with working for Soho House Group, I initially met someone who worked at House 4 magazine. And it was her that went, oh, I'll pass your website on to someone in the marketing team. Okay, granted, it doesn't... Yes, she sent the link, obviously, if they decided they liked the work. And that's what got me the job in the end. But initially, if I went to try and email those people with no one necessarily linked, it would have probably been quite difficult. They might not have even bothered to look at the website. So there's a little bit of... You have to put yourself out there. There's lots... Always talk about what you do. Even though you probably feel like forever self-promoting, but like often I'll be out and I was like, oh, what do you do? And she was like, oh, I work for them. I'm like, oh, great, can I say? And it sounds, you do feel a bit awkward doing it, but you have to do it. You have to kind of get yourself out there, and it, there are times when you don't feel that confidence, and I actually find the days that I don't feel that confident, I don't bother contacting anyone. And you have to just step away sometimes and have a day off and, regroup, and then set yourself back up again, because it is tiring not having anyone answer your email sometimes. But you can't give up, and you've got to find another route in. That's why I do find, weirdly, Instagram quite good for that, because I even follow like editors and people who work for the magazines. I'm forever trying to get into Waitrose magazine. I will not give up. It's like I'll get in there one day. They probably won't even pay very well, but I've just got it in my head. That's what I want to do. So there's like little things. I just get missions, and I think, how am I gonna get in there? And there's always someone in the end that gets you in. So yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm probably rambling. So what I could show you, so that's a sort of a bit of a debrief of, I guess, getting into photography, assisting, doing lots of research and just following people. Sometimes it's quite handy, say if you're into portraiture, or, it's quite handy to sometimes even copy someone's style for when you're testing, just to learn, to work out what they maybe did, like that's, you look at, oh, I really like the lighting in that, copy it, see if you can work it out, because it will sink in, you start to learn how to use things, so that's always really handy. There is no, it's totally fine. Everyone sits and copies styles and tries things out. You find your style within that. It takes a while. I think it's only the last few years that I think, okay, I think I work in this way. And then even then I'll push it. It's good to basically it's good to never feel too settled in photography. It's not really, if you're after stability and a settled life, do not get into photography. But to be fair, I think I'm quite addicted to the stress of it. It's quite exciting. You kind of always forever feel quite young. It's weird, you get older and all the teams get younger. Like even the like people who work at the agencies who are your clients are getting younger and you're getting older. But it keeps you quite young, it's quite exciting. And you know, I mean, not to bring it up, but like, so I had a child a few years ago in which people might have even said, oh my God, how are you going to be freelance and do photography and have a kid? And it's like, it's so bizarre, but actually it works really, really well. You're super focused. It's a great career in switching it around, doing it, go whichever way you like. And, you know, you can make it really work for you. But you do have to just push through sometimes, some of the times when you think you might give up. But if you deep down really love it, you just have to fight through it and do something exciting if you're not getting any work for a couple of weeks for some reason, or just go and shoot stuff. So although I've been too busy recently, I am shutting down, and on Friday I've decided that I need to do a personal creative shoot, and all of those are really handy because that creative shoot that I'll do on Friday will showcase something that I might not have had in client jobs recently, because a lot of client jobs are actually weirdly quite boring. They're like, they want the job done and, you know, it's sort of your style, but you, at the end of the day, you're at the mercy of what the client wants, and half the time you think, I wouldn't have probably done that, but you can't say no sometimes, and you have to be a bit diplomatic. So every so often you have to bring yourself back, regroup and do something creative. And then actually, weirdly, although you might not get the job that looks like that, an agency or an art director might see that shoot and think, wow, that's quite interesting. And then they'll book you for something else completely different, but it'll show to them that you're always, you know, pushing yourself and trying new ideas. So anyway, that's the whole rant about getting into photography. So I'll talk about how I might go about a shoot. So I'll talk about the creative shoot to begin with, because it's a bit more exciting. So there's a stylist I work with called Olivia Bennett, and she's really great, and this is more food folk or still life focused. So someone like her, we might think, okay, she might say, I want to do something a bit more like people eating. We did this a few years ago when it was just sort of starting out, you know, when people started doing these really above shots with people's hands, and this was a few years ago, and we wanted to explore that a little bit just to have it in our portfolio, because in case clients wanted it. So something like that, we would have a chat about what I wanted out of it, and she'll tell me what she wants out of it. She's a chef as well, you see, and she actually at the time was focusing quite a lot on seafood. So I'll say, you know, I really need something where it's quite bright, I want people sharing food. She'll say there's food she wants, I'll say, you know, and we'll bounce around ideas. She's great, she'll send mood boards, we'll have a chat about it, and then by the time we've got on set, everything has effectively been organised. So the idea is once we're on set, we're kind of just getting on with it. We've got a structure of, we also, if we're doing it in one day, we'll also be realistic as well. So it's better to do less pictures, but make those 6 pictures amazing and not worry about doing too much in one day. So, you know, this was one shoot that we did. This is in fact the first shoot I did with her, and it went so well because I'd never even met her prior to that. And it literally did kind of come out the way that we wanted, which is quite nice. So yeah, it's just, we just had lots of discussions, about colour and how we were going to go about doing that. And this shoot was actually in her studio, natural light, and I think I kind of knew that I was going to go natural light, and her studio is basically a full window, which is really nice, and it was in the summer, so the light lasts longer. And it's just little things like that to think about when you're shooting try and think about the style that you're after, and then why. Maybe it's just because it's your style visually, you like that, and then think about the reality of the timings of doing that. So if you're in the winter and you want to do something natural light, I wouldn't sort the shoot hour for 3 o'clock meet up. It's little things, like that. Trying to think what else. Just try and think it all out. If you're working with a team, especially like a stylist or someone that you're doing a portrait of or whatever, just try and get everything out there before the shoot, because it's quite stressful if you're on a shoot and then you haven't really thought things through. You're kind of just wasting time. And then say this is another shoot we did, and this is a different way that we worked actually, because this is a very last minute shoot, and I actually think it came out quite well, and we probably only had 2 days discussion about it. It was this time last year. I just randomly went pumpkin picking and came back with all these things that I found, and I rang her and just said, are you around the next day? I really want to do a shoot, but let's just be a bit more free. She's got a studio full of all kinds of stuff, and we just sort of I had an idea where I was like, I just want it to be a bit random and a bit surreal, and it doesn't really have to be about anything, but just it being quite pretty and interesting. And that was quite nice sometimes to work like that as well. So we had talked about it. It wasn't massively structured, but we knew which way we wanted to go. We had a quick debrief in the morning of looking at Salvador Dali 1970s cookbook and all kinds of stuff. Really quickly we went round her studio, grabbed bits and bobs, placed them all together on the floor to see roughly what would go with what colours, and then we just got on with it. So it was that was a really exciting way to work actually. So we do that sometimes, but I think because we'd worked together quite a bit and I know her style, so I knew, she's quite abstract in her ways, so we just thought, let's just stick that together. So it's, what was just a play around shoot, and there wasn't any like, this is going to go here, because some shoots I do and I have an exact purpose of why I'm doing it and how we're going to promote it and who's going to be part of it, product wise, and it's very bright on here. Sorry, they're not the right. It's actually a lot darker. No, yeah. These are the true colours. No, yeah. There are times where I'm massively structured and we've got a proper shot list, and but then it's fine to just throw all that out the window sometimes and just have fun, because it's when you're having fun that things like this happen. And I actually really love this shoot, and it just wasn't planned at all. It all just came together. I think we did this in about 8 hours. So that's nice. It's really nice when you find someone to work with. It's actually quite hard to find someone good to work with. Because I've got quite a big work ethic, and it's hard to, it's nice to meet like-minded people who are just willing to just go, yeah, let's do it, and then just actually do it. Because you might find there's a lot of people who say they'll do stuff and then they just don't bother. So it's there's a lot of hot air. So it is nice to, if you can find someone you like working with, it depends on what photography you want to do, but and we can chat about that later. So that's like a really nice way of working, where you're kind of like bouncing ideas off each other. So I'll quickly show you an example of, say, me and Olivia doing a shoot on Friday, which it's been a year since we've had time to do this, so it's quite exciting. I'm quite excited about it. So I had this idea that I want to shoot a black and white shoot. It does have a purpose in respects that all the designers that we're using in the shoot, it's a bit of a still life shoot, but product as well, and abstract. But the idea is everyone we've sort of handpicked ceramicists, and there's a shop that we get stuff from who he only stocks like independent designers. It's all really nice pieces basically, and a lot of them are just from the designers. So the story is a bit of a showcase of people's stuff, but in an abstract kind of way. And I wanted it to be very graphic, but the organic aspect is going to be like food being burnt and smoke, and so there'll be that mixed with very structured. So in this one, actually, it has been a long time, but I'm probably going to be doing a lot of lighting for this one. So that's what I mean. It's like, although a lot of my work for quite a long time has been quite a lot of natural light and very bright, with having all that past knowledge over the years, you can just switch it up and you can do it without any, like I've got those options basically. And that's why I think it's really important to learn all elements, and then you have choices rather than, well, I only shoot like this because I don't know how to do light. It's, you want to not do it because you don't want to rather than you can't. So we've had this chat, and this is an example of how we're going to go about our shoot. I've given her ideas, and then she'll send me mood boards, and we'll just start this visual chat together. So this is roughly, I'll go, oh yeah, actually a bit of this and maybe a bit of that, and oh, this is a bit too whimsical, I want something a bit more graphic, I want something more like this, and it's a really nice way of working. So if you find, this is sort of, I'm more heading towards this way, but I'm using, so I've like sourced ceramicists that do a lot of raku, glazes and stuff like that. And it's just little things to think about, like, because it's black and white, we've actually got quite a lot of room to play around. So we're going to, for textures basically, so like plastic bags and marble and different tones, cracks and stuff like that. You can push lighting quite a lot with black and white as well, which is quite nice. And then, so they're the kind of rough ideas, visuals of what we're generally looking into. And then how are the pictures going to be put together? Like, what are they about? There's got to be a little theme within it. Obviously, it being black and white and about charred stuff is part of it. But then the element that we've decided that the story will be about is breakfast, lunch and dinner in an extremely abstract way. And then these are the kind of, we'll think about, this is all a bit too set for me, I'm probably going to go a lot more abstract than this. But then we'll find like people that we're looking at, so we're going to like, this is the kind of stuff we're getting in. So this is like one of the designers that we found that sort of fitted in with the idea. And then just different ideas of food that we might use, shop, so it's, you just start collecting images, putting it all together. None of these images necessarily look like the pictures that are in my head, but they're just elements to think about. So this is a really nice way to work, and she's great for doing this, to be honest. So I think our shoot will probably be a lot more abstract than this, like chopped up, like a chopped fish. So we've got fish there, but the shoot it's just to remind us that we want a fish with its head chopped off and burnt. There's like, it's just having like little visuals of like what we're after. So it depends on what you're doing. You can do this with portraiture as well. Just get it all down. You're not gonna, none of the images that I want are in there that are gonna be the final shoot. But just shove stuff together and you just get this really nice idea. It's really great for communicating if you're working with someone, and it's a really good practice for when you do get a big client shoot. So then when you do get a big client shoot, you think, right, okay, we need to get this together to communicate with them. So that's great. So that's sort of when you're working. It's good to do all these kind of things, and that's how you can build your website up. No one needs to know that you did that. Half the time people don't know if I did that on a job or if it was my own portfolio shoot. And it doesn't really matter, because they just want to see a cool picture or picture that might be something that they're looking for. It's always good to look at the trends, or if there's a restaurant I want to shoot for, I might just see what style they're shooting, and if I don't necessarily have it but I really want to work with them, I might go away and say, oh, do you want to do this shoot? So there's a bit of that. Obviously, once you get onto a client shoot, it's a bit of a different story. Sometimes you get to do this kind of like, you get to be a big part of it and putting it all together. Other times, like if I'm shooting at the restaurants, I'm kind of at their mercy. I might be able to say, I don't think that background's going to work, and I don't say it like that. I say we can try it, but it might not be that great. So just like the art of talking to people without saying no is a skill in itself that I've learned over the years. So yeah, you will, there's situations where I'm not necessarily in charge, but I get to maybe sort of, direct them where I think it might be better. So that's I guess I'm talking about this area because that's a lot that I've been working in recently. I also do portrait work, but this is a bit more, a lot more of my commercial work is food. But I do portrait work, and this is a recent shoot this was actually a commission as well. And this is another way that I work where there are times where I'm on set. There's some jobs you do and you think, oh, I'm just doing this and it's a bit for the money, and that's fine. And then I might even think, God, that won't even go in my portfolio. But then there are other shoots I get on and I can see, I'll do what the client wants, but I can see it has a bit more to it. So I might, while I'm on the job, I'll think, oh, I might just do a bit extra while I'm here if I get the time. Because I just think there's something here. And this was a real classic example of this, where it was literally just a commission to go and photograph kids getting their A-level and GCSE results. So it wasn't really a particularly, it wasn't something I'd even thought about. I just went, oh, that's fine, I know this like charity, I'll just go and shoot for them. And I went, and while I was there, it was one of those moments when I thought, this is actually really quite interesting, and actually to get into a school to do portraits of kids getting A-levels would usually be quite difficult, really. So while I was there, I was shooting for them, doing the happy, I've got my A-level results, pictures that they wanted. And then in between I was sort of, because I work on when I'm doing portraiture, I tend to work on a long lens, so like 70 to 200, because I quite like to be out of the way. I don't really like to be in people's faces. I like to kind of watch them and see what they're doing, even if it's someone that knows I'm photographing them, even if it's commercial, I'm the same. Even if it's like models, I'll just go, okay, well, I'll just let you be there for a bit, and half the time I pretend I'm not even taking the photo, and then I'll sort of watch them and chat rubbish, which I'm really good at, clearly, you might know this now. And then I'll just watch them, and then I'll take the photo within that time, but I kind of like the idea that they don't think they've been photographed, and they tend to get the look, or I tend to get that moment that I particularly like to get, basically. Some might say they just look really miserable, but I think it's not the miserable look. I think it's just that moment where they've just gone into themselves for a second, where they've stopped noticing you. That's the moment in portraiture that I really love, and you get to sort of stare at them for a while. And this one was just this kid that he'd got his GCSE results actually, and then this one is it's the one that's in the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize. So that will be out in November. I'm really excited. 2 more weeks. I've been waiting for ages. So again, that was the thing. I haven't entered competitions for ages. If you can focus on competitions you like and try and think about it when you're doing your work, that you might potentially enter it into something, it's worth doing. I just hadn't had anything that I particularly thought was worth it, so I'd left it for a while, and then I shot this series, and it was actually a few people were like, oh, you must enter next year, because obviously I shot it after the deadline of last year, the year before, because this was shot in 2016. So it was quite nice because I sat on it for a year, and then I only entered a few. So I entered this one to the Taylor Wessing, and this one, and they both got to the second round. I actually weirdly like this one, and that's the one that I'm always drawn to. And I'm like, oh, everyone's like, no, we like that one. And I'm like, how weird. I would have gone for the other one. Anyway, they went for this one, and that has really opened my eyes again to this world, because I was in this world years ago and I used to try for competitions, and then I sort of stopped trying, and then because this just naturally came about, this project, and I wonder if that might have been the thing, because it wasn't forced, and I just did it because it was happened to be there at that moment in time, and thought it was interesting. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, because it was something that wasn't too considered. So that's, and I have really noticed how this is potentially going to help me this year. Just having those, people are more likely to have a meeting with me now, and I don't know why. It's just that you get somewhere in a competition that's known, and all of a sudden people just think, oh, okay, maybe you are quite serious. And it doesn't matter how many years you've been working. So I definitely think trying to enter competition is actually quite good, and I'm going to be working a lot more towards that this year. But again, you can't shoot for the competition. You've just got to shoot what you're shooting, but have it in mind in your process, about the quality and where you see it. I don't think, you can never guess what they want, so you've just got to be honest in the image that you're making.
Did you choose the backgrounds, Natasha?
Well, so I did actually. These guys, so basically they had to be interviewed because they'd done really well. So these are students that had been picked by the charity that had excelled, and it was generally a school that wasn't very good. I think they've all been through quite a lot of hard times. It's a South London school. So in this moment, they'd sort of been taken out to have a meeting. It was obviously, I really loved the floor, and there was definitely a sort of visual decision in picking that area. I was kind of like, can we just move over here? Yeah. But in a way, it was quite good because they were talking to someone else, and they weren't focused on me, so that was quite nice. And that's when I prefer to photograph people that way. So this is the one that was in the Portrait of Britain, and she was lovely, and I really love that picture of her because she was, she's really strong, she's super bubbly, but she was really focused, and all of them were just wicked to talk to. It was actually quite an emotional shoot. It was really inspiring. But like, say, this guy, he was just there, so I didn't place him at all. He was just standing there, and he'd just had a meeting with the woman who was doing case studies on them, basically. But the bit that I like, and I could jump on over to that project actually, because it was quite interesting, and a way of shooting when you're out. If you get an assignment or a documentary shoot job or whatever, or something that you're exploring, while I was there, I just sort of was exploring the space and watching how people were. And the bit that I found really fascinating was quite a lot of the boys would take themselves, so this room is hectic, all the way behind them is loud, and people are like, girls are screeching, it's really quite crazy. But what I really loved within this sort of madness was this like little pockets of silence that these guys were like just taking themselves to the back of the room. So I was quite fascinated by watching people. So while I'm there photographing for this client who wants the happy loud bit, I'm sort of you always just got to keep your eyes open, have a look around what's going on, and then I just clocked them and I kept watching that. You have to watch two things at a time, and just like little scenes of just that moment of people. It's quite a big deal. I love these guys, like these twins, and it was quite interesting how they were both, dealing with their, he was just, I just loved the way that they were looking at his results, and the other kid was just like, whatever. Liked his body language. And it was like, I loved the way that the girls were, like, guys would go away from each other and the girls would open it together, and I quite liked there was like a really lovely sort of watching young adults in a way, their sort of body language. I really liked stuff like this. I really liked all the like elements of technology a little bit as well, just like that little bit of wire. I don't know, it was a really weird time because it wasn't what I was out there to do. And that's what's so nice. If you can just always be a bit aware of your environment, and the minute you see something, you think, this could be quite interesting. You just got to go with it. It doesn't have to be. I, in the past, made the mistake of feeling like I had to be in control of everything. I had to structure the project, and weirdly, it stopped me doing projects because I'd build it up so much, and then I would build myself away from it at the same time. I'd be like, oh no, I don't know how to do that. I want to do a project on them. Oh, I don't know how to go. I'd overthink it. This weirdly has taught me that you just don't. It doesn't have to happen that way. It doesn't have to be this 10-year project. It could just be something that happened for a period of time, and it's just a really lovely project that tells a little story. And this is actually from a different time, so this is actually a newer one. This is this year's one.
What about like model releases as well? Is that important?
Yeah, so this was quite good actually in a way because because I'd gone with ARC, they had all the releases with them because these were all a lot of them were like case studies and stuff. But yeah, that is definitely an issue.
So if you weren't at ARC and you were doing it, you'd recommend getting model releases?
Yeah, well, they actually had their model releases as well, but next time I think I would probably bring my own, as I've definitely learned from that, because when the picture of the lad did get into the tailor Wessing,
They asked for
I had a 2-week manic. Where's
That's
his
what I was
mum?
wondering. I was gonna go.
I had to go and knock on this mum's door. I'm not even joking you. I had to go and
I'll
find
give you a
her.
print.
I got you a print. This lady just being like, "Who are you?" I was like, "Oh my god!" But luckily, yeah. I think if
That's
I
what
was
I was
like a 50-year-old man, I probably wouldn't have been the same story. But I don't know. There's a bit of that to it. But I just sort of had already got the form, print, everything ready to go, and hoped to God that she would agree and sign. Because I was like, please, this is like I've never got into this competition. So yeah, I learned that because I didn't go about it as a project. It didn't really occur to me because I didn't really think about it. In a way, it wasn't till I was editing that I realised there was something there.
Oh, so unconsciously as you were shooting.
Sort of, I was kind of thought it was quite nice, and I kind of like was shooting, but it was only. I guess it was when I was editing that I really started seeing it all come together, and then I showed a few people. And they were like, "Oh yeah, it's really nice." So it was. There was a lot of different processes before I got to this point. But so yeah, that's it really. The other thing I would definitely advise is just being on top of your marketing. When you get to that stage where you're kind of like, okay, this is what I'm about, and now I want to get work in this area. Think about your website. I even just from going through it with you guys here, I'm thinking, I might get rid of that now. You have to constantly review it, and yeah, stuff like Instagram and newsletters. If you've got a bunch of clients that you want to keep them updated with what you're doing, send them out newsletters. Make them interesting and make them not too long, and make sure it's got a little bit of. I remember I did a newsletter that went down quite well where it was me and Olivia done an autumn food shoot for the purpose of it, promoting ourselves a bit in that area, and we did a newsletter that we sent out to loads of people that had a little recipe from the shoot. So it was like had something. It wasn't just like, look at all my pictures. It was a bit like, so this black and white shoot I'll probably do as a newsletter and say, here's some really cool designers if you want to last minute. Sounds really cheesy, but it's just that thing where I'm kind of giving you something. I'm getting you to look at my pictures, but here's some links to some really amazing people. Personally, I'd like to try and get the shoot on. It's nice that. So there's loads of platforms that I think, okay, if I get that shoot on there, that gets seen by this many people, and I know agencies follow that platform. So it's always good to just sort of think about stuff. And I'll contradict myself and also say it's also good not to do that sometimes as well. It's balance. So it's good to have a laugh, try some stuff out. Not everything has to have a finished outline of where it's going to go. It could just be because you wanted to make some nice pictures or test out some stuff with people, test out some ideas. And then other times it's good to go, okay, I want this to go there, blah, blah, blah. LinkedIn, weirdly, although I hate LinkedIn, it's actually, I need to update it a bit more myself actually, but I do keep on top of that. And sometimes if I do a blog, it's so easy to just copy and paste, and I'll just do it as a thing, because I actually follow loads of people on LinkedIn, and actually when I'm doing my true stalking then I am on LinkedIn, finding out who those art directors are, who the editors are, who, you know, it's so important. Like, there are times where I literally phone an agency and pretend that I know them. I'm just like, oh hi, it's Mary in from da-da-da, and they go, oh yeah, she's just, and it's like and sometimes they go, she doesn't work here. I'm like, okay. Update your LinkedIn. Yeah. So, you know, you have to be a bit, put yourself out there sometimes. It doesn't always work, but once in a while it does. And I think in a roundabout way, I think that's it really. I mean, I guess it's better if you guys ask me questions, because I could ramble forever.
That's what I was going to say. Open it up to the floor. That's really interesting.
Is that alright? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to get through, so it's just a bit
No, you're amazing.
sporadic.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. But yeah,
Questions?
hit me.
You're
Sorry, I got my back.
You're really amazing. You should give some workshops in branding.
Oh really?
Good.
Oh okay.
Really good.
Another job.
Yeah,
that'd be
it's
good.
really good. And about LinkedIn, that's true what we are talking
Yeah.
about. Actually, LinkedIn is like Facebook for business people.
Yeah, and they do
Have
look
to.
at it. They really do. You think people
That's
don't,
true.
but they stalk you too. So if I email someone, that they will look into you. And I actually met the guy from John Brown Media. That was it. He's like the senior art director, not even art director. He's like creative director of the agency. And I was just like, I don't even know. I think I'd messaged randomly, because half the time you don't get messages back, and I'm very accepted that someone might not ever message me. But he clearly looked, because he went, oh, I like that shoot that you've just done, you know, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And he goes, oh, come in for a meeting, and it was, I was never going, I was like, is he weird? Straight away. Like a protective woman. I'll meet you in your office, yeah. But, you know, he's the one that Waitrose magazine. It's not him. I need to get the art director to let me. But anyway, but that's what I mean with LinkedIn. That's what LinkedIn's handy for. You get to, you know, you might get that meeting because those people do go on it. You know, you just, I guess my partner's a creative director, and it's really interesting because he is the type of person who might be my client. So I kind of like have learnt lots from him over the last few years, because he's only just sort of, he was a senior graphic designer, and in the last few years he's become a creative director. And it's interesting because I hear him talking about his son, and I'm like, oh yeah, and it's made me think, oh actually they do that. That's really hard to say. And he's made me think about my Instagram. He's made me think about my newsletters. He literally proofreads my blogs to make sure it sounds right. Like, so that whole branding thing's actually come from someone who works in the industry, and I've kind of tried to implement it a bit, basically.
Which is interesting actually, which comes around to being in charge. So on a shoot with the creative director or the client, how do you negotiate that? Like, because then do you feel quite passive that you're like, okay, this is the shot that I want, this is this champagne or whatever the case may be, and then you have to recreate that, or how do you feel?
It can be a bit of a conversation. So it will be like, okay, we want this shot and we want it here, and they've got a bit of an idea, and then I'll go, well, I think maybe this might work better, you know, or not even better. You have to basically got to make it feel like it's their idea. And they like to feel that, you know, they want your input, but sometimes, you know, you got to hear it in their voice when, you know, and they're like, well, no, I just really want it like that, then you've got to do it like that. But sometimes I can go, oh, let's try that, and I'll try this too. You know, I'll just kind of, and then they'll, you know, so there's a bit of
Natasha,
being diplomatic. Yeah, they're like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted, you know. And it's that kind of like, got to be a bit diplomatic and make them feel, you know, that they had the idea. But there are times where I'm like, I just honestly don't think that area is going to work so well because of da-da-da. You just never can say no. That's the one thing, because they just push back, and then You've got to think. I'm always thinking, you know, there are times if a client's just got on my nerves, I just go to the toilet and take 2 minutes. Just gonna go to the toilet and then go, oh, and then go. Anyway, so you know, I have emails like, and I'm actually going through it at the moment where, you know, a 2-day shoot or suddenly becomes, oh, well, instead of a 2-day, we'll just do 8 till 8, and it's like, great, okay. But you want the natural light thing, but, you know, the light's going to be gone at 4. You know, it's like, oh, well, you know, we'll work it out. And it's like, okay, I'll work it out. Okay. It's like, I've got to work with that. And then, you know, but I have to, and again, this is why it's good that, yes, they want natural light, but I knew it was going to be dark, and I know exactly what's going to happen, so I'm prepared for that. So I'm thinking, okay, I need X amount of lights, and I always have a good assistant that, basically I have a good assistant that I know will just be on it, because it's, you know, and you know, these days people really, you know, it used to be, you know, we only need 3 pictures all day and it's going to be perfect. I think that's what gets to me, is I'm a bit OCD basically, and I never get the time to make the picture exactly how I want it. And there are days where I'm just like, one day I'm going to get the big ad job where they let me take a picture all day, just one picture, and it'd be perfect. But I've learned, you learn to work fast and you learn to make creative decisions really, really quickly, and that's what I've gained over the last few years, is just because I'm like, well, I still want it to be really good. And sometimes it's not always about the money. Like, sometimes I don't care about, you know, obviously I've got my rates and stuff like that, but there are times, you know, I always, whatever the job is, I'll always make sure it's good. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter. Because those people, you've always got to think that person might move to another agency one day, and they will, you know, if you've done a good job and been nice and maybe put up with some of their, you know, it's in reason. You know, I won't be able to deal with someone being rude, but, you know, you know, if they feel like you've been accommodating, people do remember that. And I think that's the thing as a photographer, it's all good doing the pictures, but if you're rude and you push against the client, or you go, no, well, you're not having that for 2 weeks, they just won't hire you because it's so saturated. So there is a bit of, there's that to learn when dealing with them. But they've got deadlines basically themselves, and unfortunately these days people do stuff 2 weeks before. So I'll get told about something, and I'm like, why are you not doing this shoot a month ago? You know, it's like, oh, we've got to have the pictures on Monday because it's all going to print. It's like, okay, I'll stay up till midnight. But, you know, so there is a bit of that. But you just learn that along the way.
How essential do you think for you in your career was it to have a degree?
Do you know what, I loved doing it, and I must say, I always thought to myself, if someone came up to me and said, shall I go to uni, is it the only way? I would probably say at this day and age with the how much they charge, yeah. I probably would. I would probably say, if you can do it, it's great in finding yourself. You know, like maybe an 18-year-old that's, you kind of need it to flourish slightly, and it was great for meeting people and expanding my mind, and I'd come from up north and needed to learn some other stuff. So it was, you know, it was good to, you know, I liked it in that way. But if I was to say career-wise, like, I would say you're better off working on set, really. But I also would say if you're not going to university, you have to be proactive of going to galleries, reading those books. Basically what you learn at university is theory and background and art history and all that stuff, although it seems, you know, well, it is relevant, but, you know, you might think it's not relevant. It is, because it sinks in to you as a creative. Like, it's good to have that knowledge. So someone who's not going to university and is going straight on set and assisting and all of that, I would say do all that as well, but you have to just be proactive and do it yourself.
Do you think that doing your degree you learn skills that enable you to help on set?
Not at all, no, not at all. I'd say university was all about learning to do art, basically, and like learning to talk about it, learning to thinking of projects and ideas, being creative. I think it gave you that time to explore and test out stuff. But I learned all of my career stuff on set stuff from going on set. I just went and hung out with people who I admired at the time, who lived where I lived and were doing stuff and testing. And at the time when I was at university, I was going out with someone who was a filmmaker, so he was always doing big sets, and he was also quite similar. He was always pushed himself, and he used to hang out with guys that were 60 years old who were like old cinematographers, and not old, but you know, they were like cinematographers when it was like proper and focus pulling and all of that. So it was a bit more, you've got to go out there and really learn it out, you know. University didn't teach that, weirdly. They don't. I used to even go to the workshop guys and say, "Are you ever going to do like a lighting course?" like they'd show you the studio for 2 hours, and then that was that for the whole 3 years. So I even approached the university and said, you know, I'd come in and teach lighting if you want. They were like, "Oh no, we haven't got the budget for that." And I was like, "Oh, we don't like $9,000 a year that you're charging." So you know, it has its place, and I do love that I went there, and I really formed a lot of my group, I guess, my friendship groups, and there was that. But if you kind of have that and you just want to get on in the industry, I'd say just go and get in touch with people. And that leads me on to assistant. If you do want to go to assistant, the best way, I literally would hunt down photographers that I like. So I'd like do all that research, and then you just sort of put yourself out there a little bit as well, where you know, can I come and assist you? Do you know, sometimes you've got to go, even if I can come and shadow someone, you have to work for free. I work for free a lot. I worked in pubs a lot, and I worked free in photography for many years. But it's sort of, you've got to do your time, and it is worth it. And then you can go and work in studios, like, because I didn't live in London at the time, but if you live in London, you know, you've got Big Sky, you know, got all the like Holborn studios. There's all of those studios to go and like get yourself familiar with kit and stuff like that. Finding a nice photographer is definitely the key, though. Then I ended up just working with the same person. That's when you really learn, is if you're with someone not every day, but ideally it's good to work with someone who's quite big and busy, because they're the ones getting on those sets, and you're more likely to learn a lot more from them. But nice photographers are so good, because you just, you know, the kind of rankings of the world and stuff, you know, that kind of art, I couldn't be bothered with the attitude, because we're not really going to learn. Like, being shouted at to do something just doesn't get you anywhere. I think if there's plenty of photographers who are equally as high up, but are just happy to teach people, basically, you know. But you have to use your initiative. You don't sit and stand on your phone and, you know, like little things like that. I think it's just like, have a little look and think, oh, you know, rather than waiting for someone to tell you what to do, the key is to just be on it. You know, if you're assisting someone and they've got their kit, I guarantee you they're going to be OCD about their kit. So you open that bag to get them a lens, just remember where that lens went. You know, it's like little things like that. Remember how the wire was done. You know, people are really funny about how the wires go in their bag. So it's like all of that I learned really quickly, and I know it sounds really weird to mention it, but it is quite weird when you're a girl, even in the photography industry. You have to kind of be a bit of a boy, like I found, just, you know, get involved. And there was that weird thing, and even just because I'm trying to hit into advertising, it is something that I feel like I kind of have to prove myself a little bit. And so there is a bit of that, and in the industry, and I guess that doesn't just in the sex way, it's also in age as well. So there's that age thing where people, you know, you kind of have to prove yourself sometimes. But yes, does that make sense? Okay.
That's brilliant. Yes.
Should I go back to your relationship with clients? Right? Now, all your fields of expertise, I can see that. Where do you feel that you have more creative freedom? Where do you think you have to be more diplomatic, as you put?
I'd say probably the food stuff I've been doing a lot of, especially restaurants. When I've been at restaurants, I've kind of just got to go with what they want. Some of the recent stuff, like marketing work with brands. So when you're working with, like I did this thing with Schweppes for the social. There's lots of work in social actually. That's another area. It's sort of like that in between advertising. It's like this middle marketing bit at the moment. When the minute you're with a brand, you're kind of at the mercy of them a little bit. You will have an input, but at the end of the day, they just have the shots that they want, and you've kind of just got to go with it. So you kind of have your creativity in respects that once you're on set, I'm happy if I think that's not working, I will definitely move it, and I'm not in a like necessarily difficult kind of way, more of a like, I've just tried that, and I'm just going to quickly move it over here and see what you think. It's always like, what do you think, and get them involved. So I do sort of work around it a bit, but there are times I think, oh my god, if I could. Budget's always the issue, really, when it comes down to it. Like even the shoot I did last week was, I would say, how have you not thought about all these props? Or, there's some things I get frustrated by, because I just think they kind of go ahead and they do all the shoot and then they get you in last minute, and part of me sometimes gets frustrated because I think, well, if you got me in 2 weeks ago to talk about it, I could come in for a meeting and I would have had the chance to say, okay, have you thought about what kind of clothes we might have, even if we're not shooting them, I need the colours, like I would be able to have a bit of an input of actually said to them, have you thought of this? Because a lot of people that I'm doing shoots with, at the end of the day, they are people that maybe do a shoot twice a year, but they think they do shoots because they're with images. So like that might be the social team, the marketing team, the PR team. But because they're in the world of images, they think they know about photo shoots, and then actually they don't, because the minute you get on set, you're thinking, oh my god, like this, we haven't got this, da, da, da. So with that in mind, I do tend to ask quite a lot of questions before. And like, oh, just checking, do we have this? Or just checking, da, 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 So I'll do a few like things like that if I haven't been involved from the beginning and it's a bit of a like, we need you to shoot next week. So that's quite a common thing that I come across. Ideally, in my world, I'll get on a shoot and I'll be able to produce it with them in advance. Like that's a client aim of mine, like one day. But yeah. Waitrose, one day, yeah. One day waitrose, yeah. Knowing my luck, it'll just be like, can you just come in this day before and we've done it all? Sometimes that's quite nice though, so I don't have all the stress, but I feel the stress on the day then. I'd rather be prepared. So I'll get on a shoot and then I'll be like, oh, so who are the people that are sitting in the shot? I'm like, oh, well, don't really know. We're thinking maybe we could just do it. And I get that a lot. And I'm like, okay. My face I'm really hard at hiding that expression. So I'm like, just like, oh my god, I know they know that I look pissed off about it. But, so that happens and that's true. But I can't do anything and therefore I have to work with it. And that's when you have to just think on your feet and just go, oh, fuck it, I've just got to make the best out of this. And so it can be frustrating when you're just thinking, but if you just thought about this for 10 more minutes, it could be really good. But like, it's why I've had such a horrific retouching job this week, because they hadn't thought about it. So they go, oh, can we not just use this floor for the above like product shots? It was like Schweppes and all the like ingredients for the cocktails. And so in that situation, I'm thinking, oh god, well yes we can, but I'm gonna have to retouch because this is a white, those white wooden floors. And really, if I knew that that's what we were doing, I would have probably said, should we hire in the backdrop, because you can hire those in and just paint it, and then I'm not retouching 20 pictures and then you're not worrying about why you're not having them on Friday kind of situation. So obviously I don't know this until I turn up and I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing, okay. And then I have to very quickly just be prepared, make it, and then I have to sit and fix that later. But I try and do things in camera as much as possible, and then anything retouching it just has to be done kind of situation.
So we're obviously a very visual society,
Yeah.
and with all the amount of pictures that you see on the web, on anywhere, in YouTube, on social media,
Mm-mm.
how do you get it out there and get your stuff?
What's seen and
Yeah. seen by people?
It is tricky, and I do probably have that feeling sometimes where I sometimes have a moment of, oh my God, it's so saturated, and even I feel quite tired because after researching for ages or just seeing stuff on Instagram, it does get a bit tiring. Sometimes you just got to ignore it, and I still make pictures that I want to make. And then there's got to be a bit of an honesty in your pictures that you actually really wanted to make it, and that's why I think sometimes trying to make something on purpose never really quite works out. You've got to always make something that you like, even if I've got a bit of a game plan, it's still something I like. And then there is a bit of it can be quite daunting. There are times where I just think, one day there's going to be so many people doing this, but this is why it's a bit of a package. So it's not just making pictures, it is making pictures and being creative, but it's everything else of your personality that comes into it as well. So it's like your efficiency, the way that you are with people, your team, and all of the other stuff. So sort of people they initially find you from your picture, but to get more and more work, it stops being about your pictures and it starts being about you. So they're a bit together. But I know what you mean, like how, I haven't got 500,000 followers on Instagram, but I also don't really care about that. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a funny one. It's always something that can get to you sometimes, and then you just have to put it to the side. And, people, it must be like filmmakers and painters, and everyone has it, but but yeah, there's not an easy answer for that one.
Any last questions?
Would
Thank
you
you
all?
so much, Natasha.
Thank you.
So interesting. Thank you so much.
No
Big
worries.
round of applause.
Thank you.